Let me preface this by stating off right at the bat that I don't really expect to find any answers here. I've copied and pasted the gist of this post to dozens of forums, and this place is pretty much my last resort. Then again, maybe it's for the best. If I don't find what I'm looking for. When I was, younger than I am now, I went through a phase where I was really into shock exploitation and gore movies. I'm not proud of it, and I won't go into details about what kind of underlying psychological issues I may have had at the time. I saw someone die in IRL when I was around 12, so that may have contributed. But it's essential you know about me for context of this post. It started with the basic slasher and body horror movies. When those have failed to deliver through the adrenaline after a while, I started seeking out real stuff. I watched the infamous Vengeance of Death Mondo documentary from 1978 and its various sequels and spin-offs. Then it got even more extreme stuff. Look, I'm starting to feel pretty slimy just typing this, so I'll leave it at that. The point is that in 2008, I found out about a certain film through a certain online gore site I was involved with. It had been circulating for a few days among various horror and shock material communities. Many people, hardened gore veterans, said it was disturbed them even more than anything than they had previously seen. And that's what makes Vengeance of Death look like a Disney movie. After watching it myself, I agreed. Now, if you're nervous about me continuing here, I can at least assure you of what I'm about to describe isn't some ultra-horrific torture or cannibalism scene or other such. You don't even want to know. Type of material, if that said, if you consider yourself to be practically faint of heart, you should probably stop reading this now. This is the movie that permanently turned me off shock, gore, and explosion videos. And it is saying something over again. There is nothing that will make you vomit all over your computer screen just reading about it. But it was a disturbing on much deeper level. A level I can't quite convey just writing about it. You may be wondering at this point, why am I trying to find this movie again? I'm over my gore craze. Well, it certainly isn't because I want to watch it again. You shouldn't either if you find it. But I went to track it down nonetheless, because someone needs to look into the origin of this thing. The film was titled Broken Windows, perpetrated to be a 1987 documentary about Chicago gangs and urban dysfunction. The title card was simply a white on black text that read Broken Windows, a Crookland Films production. If anyone has any information on the Crookland Films, please message me even if you know about the movie in question, because I have not been able to find any information about them. The title card was followed by text and what read, more than 800 people are killed in the city of Chicago every year. That number is expected to rise over the next decade. The film opened with the interview footage of a young black man. Most people featured throughout the black, so I wouldn't make a note of it beyond this point. But they were whites, Hispanics, and Asians. Well, I used to do dirt in LA. When I moved here to Cook Country, I thought I was going to come in and show the others how we did things. You know what I mean, he begins. But I got checked real quick. Gangs here aren't nothing like it was in LA. They do different here. It's everyone for himself at the end. The opening clip really set the tone for the future. The film had no narrator and no context of various clips was shown, only given these sporadic interviews, clips, and the occasional brief of text overlay. This was the first chilling aspect. The interviews were also real, and by that they mean real, raw, honest. The year 1987 was just a bit before the rise gangster rap culture, so no one was fronting here. So no one was paying up to trying to come off as NWA. It was just brutal. Honest descriptions of the gang life in Cook Country, and someone was interviewed who he said he always killed people. There was always no reason to believe he was playing the part. The one interview bragged about how he could get the whole block locked down just by walking by. Others were more somber, such as the man who looked to be in his late 40s, who said he had formed his gang with other returning Vietnam veterans as a way of survival. One managed to get a small rise out of me. It was of an 18-year-old British guy. He was a real posh British accent with blonde hair, looking like he belonged to a real boy band. He said he had been raised by a wealthy family, but had moved to Chicago to join a white gang out of boredom. He liked how he talked about enjoying darkies and hoped to open a brothel. After the opening interview, the next clip was of a burning house. A woman could be heard crying off camera that her child was inside. This went on for a while, as it was going on 3 minutes. I started to wonder why I wasn't hearing any sirens. As if reading my mind, text faded in, one line at a time. There are many areas of Chicago that first responders are afraid to travel to. Even in the middle of the day, residents may be left on their own devices in case of a fire. It will be another 40 minutes before a fire engine arrives. This small chill went down my spine. Still, I wasn't understanding why this movie was being shared on gore sites. The clips did get more graphic though. Disturbing footage of violent crime, police brutality, domestic violence, and the horrifying consequences of drug abuse. All shown minimally edited handheld footage. Shootouts, deaths, gang installations, none of which were censored in any way. Not all the scenes were graphic and violent, but those that showed it all, objectively, it was getting worse than what I had seen in Vengeance of Death. But there was something about it, something I couldn't place, that made it 10 times more haunting. This wasn't some explosion and flick, with real gore scenes mixed with fake, staged events. This was nothing like the kinds of movies I had been watching. This was something very different. An early test of dark offerings in the film that was provided with the form of footage of a shootout high-rise public housing complex. The two gunmen shot each other from the windows, one of the same building as the cameraman, and the other as the building across the commons. For the most of the clip, the gunmen were not visible. It was just sounds of sporadic gunfire and occasional clattering of a window for minutes on end. Eventually, the shooter in the other buildings made the mistake of leaning out the window to get a better aim. He was promptly shot and pummeled in 20 stories to his death, where his head split open and splattered vice versa, all over the concrete. A less graphic but quality disturbing clip for me anyway, was of two gangs shooting at each other from their cars. When one of its head shield sprayed with bullets, it careened off the road, almost plowing into a gaggle of school children who had just been let out. Not all the clips were hardcore gangbanging, but practically disturbing segment featuring a street race, as the victor of the race showed to a stop, and the other members of the racing club gathered around to congratulate him. A panhandler approached the driver's side, and he was mowed down by the other racer. There was no blood, no scream, just a horrible crash of metal as the man was ejected into the air, and then just was gone. I think that's what haunted me the most. There were other clips, too many to describe here, but I'll give a brief rundown of some of the ones that stick out in my mind the most. A parole officer arrives with the police house at the arrest to a man for a violation. This man shouts through the door and the officers that he will never go back to prison. A gunshot is heard and the officer stormed in to find that the man has ended his life. A young teenager is taken for a car ride to do drive-by shooting as a part of this intimidation. The camera films from the inside of the car with several gang members. They pulled up to a target's house, and the target comes outside and begins arguing with the gang. For whatever reason, they decide not to go through with the shooting and drive off. A pair of gang members are shown preparing weapons and ammunition of what looks like the basement or garage. They discuss how they carry out an attack against a rival gang later that night. The documentary never shows the attack, nor reveals what happened. A cop pulls over a man with a broken taillight. During the stop, the man attempts to flee and is run over by a dump truck. Two teenagers are shown throwing rocks at an overpass. One rock hits the car windshield. The next clip is of a close-up footage of the vehicle, revealing the battered face of a female driver, probably dead. A woman on drugs is shown having a miscarriage at the hospital. After a while, it was realized why these clips stirred up in such dread in me. I don't even know if anyone else realized it, but they were all filmed at the same type of camera. There was no difference in properties like an aspect ratio, and the style of filming was the same. There was never a timestamp on the video indicated it was just the amateur footage. What's more, no one seemed to acknowledge the camera or the person holding it. Whoever was holding it in never heard or seen and did not appear to be invested by any of the events while recording. It doesn't make any sense, but I'm certain none of the footage in the film was faked. It was all very real, and the film had no oversearching narrative structure to tie the clips together. And yet the footage all had vaguely cinematic quality about it, despite the almost non-existent editing. The scene that still haunts me the most, was a man who tried to rob an undercover narcotics officer knife at point. When the cop punched him and tried to take him an arrest, he dropped the knife and pulled out a gun. I guess the gun was only used for emergencies, and he thought using a knife would get him less than prison time if he was caught. The man backed away from the cop and started running, eventually carjacking someone, leading the cops on a chase. The chase filmed from different angles and yet not appear to be staged. The man crashed into a tree near what looked like a college campus and got out. He grabbed a woman who looked to be pregnant and held his gun to her head. The cops tried to talk him down. The camera zoomed in on his face. Within moments of either fear or guilt overtook him. He released the woman. He dropped his gun for a split second too late. One cop fired, knocking him to the ground. The scream he uttered will haunt me for the rest of my life. The camera zoomed in on his face again, and as he bled out in the snow, clearly dead. The officers began swarming around the body. I could hear one of them swearing off camera and muttering that the deceased could not have been older than 16 or 17. They get younger every year, he said. After I finished this movie, I felt like my whole soul had been emptied out of my body. I knew right then and there that I would never watch another shock film again. All the upload and download links disappeared within days. As far as a few people who knew about it and could tell, the whole web had somehow scrubbed it clean off. The last scene, the feature was silent, and the security footage of an alley. The only clip is the whole film was not recorded on the handheld. A man was walking down along the alley. He was wearing the same clothes as the man in the interview that opened the movie. I could tell it was him. He stopped by two officers who emerged from the alley door. He tried to run, but he was shot in the back. The two men left. The footage ran as the deceased bled out many minutes until the movie abruptly ended without credits. You know, in a way, I'm glad I saw this thing. Like I said, it broke me out of my previous viewing habits, and now I have the comfort of being able to react with appropriate disgust whenever I see graphic violence. Something which I did not realize how bad I missed until after this experience. It was like getting a small piece of my humanity back. However, I can't imagine what was the goal of the film, and what the effect I can imagine having most people would be to steal their humanity. If anyone has any information of this documentary, Crooked Films, please PM me if you find the movie and watch in your own discretion. I was honestly really surprised to learn that several users had also seen or at least heard of broken windows. It's especially surprising that I actually found others here and not on the gore forums. I tried asking about this. The couple sites I first encountered the film have long since gone, dead, and been replaced with ad parkers. It looked like I have overestimated how obscure this thing is in my initial post. Of course, it definitely can be described as structure, to say the least, but apparently it did not make every minor blip in someone's internet circles, just beyond gore sites. Fortunately for the word, but unfortunately for me right now, it seems as though very few actually watched it, and it's a brief moment notatory that there was a result of people talking about how they heard secondhand and how shocking it was. Some of you sent links to old message boards threads where the OP asked something along the lines of, "What is the most disturbing movie in existence?" And people listed visual answers like Vengeance of Death or Cannibal Cruel. And a couple also mentioned that they have also heard of a movie called Broken Windows. And that was really messed up. But when they have not seen it for themselves, I don't even know how I missed these threads in my previous searches for information. I have also learned there are various images of the cover of the film out there on the web. However, these sites give no other information beyond the name and release date of the film, along with a couple others that simply described it as being Chicago gangs. The cover was just black and white with drawing of smashed window pane with a little plain to white text, along with the studio Crooked Films. I haven't still found information about them. To answer the question what many of you have been asking me this week, yes, someone did send me the film. Sort of. They sent it to me a version of the film, but it's not the same. It's heavily censored with all the bloody scenes taken out. Several interviews missing, including the first one, an overall length of barely 40 minutes, compared to the almost 3 hours of the original. The couple of you who messaged me saying that this had been a documentary, but did not remember any of the gruesome stuff I had described, likely saw this edit. The version was sent to me was a number of awkward cuts, where the really violent scenes used to be, which is likely would be noticed by someone who has seen the original. I don't know where this revised version came from, but I doubt Crooked Films that describe the recut. As someone who lives in Chicago told me that a part of the carjacker who got surrounded vaguely familiar as a news story they may have heard about it years ago, but they were not aware of any video recording of the event. I'll try to keep you guys updated, even if I never find the full film again. It does make me feel a little better to know that there are others who know about it in some way. This is the last post I'm going to make on this subject before I delete my account and change my IP address. Thanks to anyone who's been sending me tidbits for information, but I would like to all please tell you to stop now. When I first started asking this about the movie, I had two goals: to be able to vent a little about my experience and to find the origins of the film. I suppose my quest is somewhat successful, but now I don't think it was worth it. As some of you may have started to guess based on this, I've been dropping in the chats and DM, yes, I did find the full version of Broken Windows. No, I'm not going to upload it or share it download links. I would advise anyone who has information on this film or its makers to keep it to themselves at this point on forward. And anyone else who has been encouraged to look into previous posts, give it up right now. I realize that there is more stake than just said you being traumatized by the film's contents. You're at risk, plain and simple. I don't know someone who knew when to send the VHS, but needless to say, when I opened the package with no return address, it didn't take me long for me to decide to move. The box contained other tapes too. They were all documentaries labeled by Crooked Films, from the mid-1980s to the early 1990s. I didn't watch them, and since I fear I've already said too much, I won't name them here. One thing I've realized during all this: life is short, too short to be spending obsession over death and gore, and too short to be chasing down dark rabbit holes of the internet. So please, if you ever attempted to get into gore films, consider reading a book instead. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.